All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most important roadmaps in all of crypto, what's coming for Ethereum in 2026. And look, this is way more than just another round of upgrades. It's a fundamental shift, one that's going to define how the network scales and really cements its place as the world's settlement layer. Let's dive right in.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into Ethereum's new infra phase and the huge upgrades on the docket for 2026. Then, we're going to explore what a roll-up-centric future actually feels like, the absolutely critical battle over sequencers, and what's really at stake here. And we'll wrap it all up by asking the big one, is this the right long-term plan?
This quote just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the moment we're in. You know, for years and years, the whole story was about potential, about what Ethereum could do. Well, that era of rapid, sometimes risky experimentation is making way for something that feels more like institutional-grade stability. The focus is shifting from if it can scale to proving that it has scaled and done it in a way that's reliable and super secure. Okay, so point number one is that Ethereum is growing up. The protocol has officially entered what everyone's calling its infrastructure phase. What that really means is we're moving to a predictable, twice-a-year upgrade cycle. It's all about strengthening the technical foundations and cutting down on risk. You know, kind of like how you'd maintain critical global infrastructure like the power grid or the internet. This slide right here shows a huge, and I mean huge, shift in thinking. For the longest time, the core developers played it super safe, always planning for the absolute worst-case scenario, which meant they were really hesitant to increase network capacity. That's all changing. With way better tools and tons of real-world data, they're now embracing what's called empirical scaling. Basically, they're pushing the limits based on what they can prove the network can handle, not just on conservative theories. All right, so at the very heart of this 2026 roadmap are two major upgrades, Glamsterdam and Hagoda. You gotta love the names. But seriously, these are designed to tackle a bunch of technical debt while also pushing the network's boundaries on decentralization and efficiency. So, in the first half of 2026, we're getting Glamsterdam. That one's all about improving execution quality. Then, in the back half of the year, Hagoda comes along to wrestle with the long-term headache of state growth. Together, they're like this one-two punch designed to make the network tough enough to last for decades. Now, the big headliner for Glamsterdam is something called eBPS, and trust me, it's a massive deal. Right now, there's a small group of really powerful players who basically control which transactions get into a block. That creates some major risks around censorship. Well, eBPS fixes this by pulling that power back into the core protocol itself. This is an absolutely huge step in decentralizing the single most critical function of the entire network. And then there's Hagoda. Its main target is this thing called state bloat. See, as Ethereum gets bigger, the amount of data you need to run a full node just keeps growing, which makes it harder and harder for regular folks to participate. Verkle trees are this incredible cryptographic breakthrough that could solve this whole problem, making it way easier to run a node and keeping a network decentralized for the long haul. So how exactly does Ethereum plan to massively scale the base layer itself? Well, the real game changer here is ZK proofs. Instead of every single validator having to rerun every single transaction, they'll just verify a tiny, super efficient proof. This frees up a ton of computational power, so much in fact that the base layer's gas limit can be safely cranked up, which could, potentially, pave the way for something like 10,000 transactions per second, directly on layer 1. That's insane. But here's the thing. The bigger scaling story isn't just about making layer 1 faster. Ethereum has gone all in on its roll-up-centric roadmap, and that means the future is a layered system where different parts of the network get to specialize in what they do best. A great way to think about this is to use a finance analogy. Think of layer 1 as the super secure central bank settlement system, like Fedwire, where finality is everything. Then you have the layer 2s, which are like the fast, cheap retail networks, think Visa or Venmo, where all the everyday transactions happen. The L2s handle all the volume, but they anchor their security and settle their transactions back on the L1. So what does all this tech talk actually mean for the average person using the network? It means dramatically lower fees. All these upgrades are making it way cheaper for rollups to post their data to layer 1. And guess what? That cost saving gets passed directly to you. We are talking about average transaction fees potentially dropping to just a few cents. That makes the network truly accessible for everyone. And while L2s are giving us this massive scaling, don't think for a second that layer 1 is just standing still. The goal for 2026 is to more than triple the base layer's own throughput. This makes sure that the main settlement layer has more than enough capacity to secure the entire L2 ecosystem built on top of it.
Okay, but with dozens of L2s popping up, there's a real risk of the user experience becoming super fragmented, right? The solution in the works is the Ethereum interoperability layer, or EIL. The whole goal is to make all these different networks feel like one single unified system. I mean, just imagine interacting with apps on different rollups, all from one wallet with just one signature. That's the future that EIL is shooting for. All right, let's switch gears and talk about one of the most critical debates happening in the ecosystem right now. It might sound a little technical, but this question of who orders the transactions on layer 2s, well, it's a huge, huge battleground for the future of decentralization. So here's the core problem. Right now, a single centralized entity called the sequencer is in charge of ordering and processing all the transactions on most rollups. This is a major weak point, a single point of failure. If that sequencer goes down or worse, decides to start censoring transactions, the whole network is in big trouble. Two main solutions are starting to emerge to fix this. On one hand, you have shared sequencers, which are basically separate networks that provide ordering services for multiple rollups. But the idea that's really gaining a ton of steam is based rollups. These actually outsource sequencing directly to Ethereum's own L1 validators. Many see this as the purest approach because the rollup gets to inherit the full, robust security and decentralization of the main chain itself. So with all these technical changes happening under the hood, what does it all really mean for the future of Ethereum? Let's zoom back out and take a look at the potential outcomes and what you should really be keeping an eye on. The success of this roadmap could have major implications for the market. Analysts are looking at a few different scenarios. Of course, a lot depends on the broader macro environment, but in a bull case, where the tech delivers and we get some regulatory clarity, a lot of people believe the structural demand from things like ETFs could really push ETH to new highs. So what are the key signals to watch? Here are 4 big milestones that will tell us if the 2026 roadmap is really on track. First, how quickly do validators actually adopt ZK verification? We'll need to see real progress there. Second, how is that L2 interoperability coming along? Is it actually unifying the ecosystem? And finally, the big one, the regulatory path for institutional staking products like ETF. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. All of these upgrades, all these debates, and all these technical milestones, they're all part of one massive strategic bet that Ethereum is making on its own future. Ultimately, Ethereum is making a strategic choice here. It's prioritizing decentralization and security on its base layer so it can become the ultimate anchor of trust for an entire ecosystem of L2s. So the final question for you is, do you think this roll-up-centric vision is the right strategy for the long term? We would love to hear what you think down in the comments. And hey, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives just like this one. Thanks for watching.